A cornerstone of Stoicism is the belief that it's not events themselves that cause us distress, but rather our perception of them. As Epictetus asserted, men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. It is our attitude towards events that determines whether we suffer or maintain our inner equilibrium. He also recommended, if you want to be truly invulnerable, don't strive for anything that isn't under your control. Stoicism teaches us to distinguish between what is within our control and what is not, and to focus our energy solely on what we can actually change. Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor and philosopher, articulated this idea even more clearly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. True freedom comes when we stop trying to control the inevitable and instead concentrate on what is genuinely within our power. Despite these sayings being over 2,000 years old, their significance remains relevant today. The world transforms, technology advances, society grows more complex, yet human nature stays the same. We still feel anxious about failures, get angry at injustice, and become disappointed in people. But are we truly troubled by the events themselves, or does the root of our turmoil lie in how we interpret them? The Stoics offer an answer to this very question. Their philosophy provides a practical guide to living a dignified, calm, and rational life. Today, in an era of information overload, economic crises, social conflicts, and general instability, Stoic ideas are regaining popularity. People are searching for ways to cope with stress, methods to remain steadfast in the face of difficulties, and strategies to preserve inner balance. Stoicism offers a simple yet effective solution. Divide all phenomena into those we can control and those we cannot. We cannot control the weather, the economic situation, other people's opinions, or political events. However, we can control our reactions, our decisions, and our attitude towards what happens. Stoicism teaches how to cope with loss, disappointment, and failure. It helps us avoid attachment to material possessions, detach from the judgments of others, and not fear the future. The Stoics don't say, don't feel pain. They say, understand its nature and don't let it control you. They don't demand we renounce pleasures, but advise against making them the ultimate goal. They don't call for passivity. On the contrary, they teach us to act where it is meaningful and not to waste energy on futile resistance. Stoicism is often mistakenly perceived as a cold and harsh philosophy, devoid of joy and love. This is a misconception. The Stoics did not reject happiness. They simply sought it in what is within human control, in actions, thoughts, and decisions. Their ideal is not a repressed and withdrawn individual, but a wise, calm, and self-assured person who cannot be broken by success or failure, wealth or poverty, life or death. This is why their teachings have endured for centuries and continue to support millions of people. Stoicism didn't arise in a vacuum. Its roots lie in earlier philosophical movements, primarily Cynicism and the philosophy of Socrates. These ideas significantly influenced the formation of the Stoic view of life, humanity, and the world. The Cynics, followers of Antisthenes, a student of Socrates, preached radical independence from material goods and freedom from external circumstances. They believed that happiness required nothing more than virtue and reason, and everything conflicting with this constituted unnecessary attachments. The most famous representative of this school was Diogenes of Sinope. He took Cynic teachings to an extreme, living in a barrel, flouting social norms, and deliberately demonstrating his indifference to comfort. For instance, he discarded his cup after seeing a boy drink water from his hands, deciding he didn't need even the simplest objects. The Cynics scorned power, wealth, and social conventions, striving for complete autonomy and independence from external factors. The Stoics adopted the Cynic idea of the importance of inner freedom, but softened their radicalism. Unlike the Cynics, who rejected society, the Stoics considered humans part of a larger cosmic order, obligated to fulfill their duties. From Socrates, Stoicism inherited the conviction that virtue is knowledge, and therefore, one must live in accordance with reason, with true freedom found in self-control. Socrates believed happiness is attainable only when a person consciously governs their thoughts and actions, rather than yielding to desires or fears. These ideas became the foundation of Stoic ethics. The birth of the Stoic school is linked to Zeno of Citium. Born around 334 BCE on the island of Cyprus, in the city of Citium, his path to philosophy began with a tragic incident. According to tradition, he was a wealthy merchant who suffered a shipwreck and lost his entire fortune. Finding himself in Athens, he visited a bookshop and came across the writings of Socrates. These ideas so inspired him that he decided to dedicate his life to philosophy. Zeno studied under various Athenian philosophers. He listened to the Cynics, studied the Megarian school of logic, and familiarized himself with Platonic teachings. However, none of these schools fully satisfied him, leading him to create his own system, integrating elements from different schools into a unified doctrine. He began teaching in the Stoa Poikila, painted porch, in the Athenian Agora, from which the school derived its name, Stoicism. Stoicism, as formed under Zeno, was based on three main disciplines: logic, physics, and ethics. Logic taught correct reasoning. Physics explained the structure of the world, and ethics showed how one ought to live. The core principle he taught his followers was living in accordance with nature, reason, and virtue. He argued that happiness is impossible without inner freedom, and freedom is attainable only when one controls their desires, fears, and emotions. After Zeno's death, his ideas were developed by his students, but the true systematizer of Stoicism was Chrysippus of Soli, who lived in the 3rd century BCE. He is often called the second founder of Stoicism because he gave the Stoic doctrine its complete form. Chrysippus was an incredibly prolific thinker. It's said he wrote over 700 treatises. He meticulously developed Stoic ethics, logic, and physics, asserting that humans should live according to nature and follow reason, accepting the inevitable. He taught that suffering arises when we disagree with the course of events, when we strive to control what is beyond our power. According to his views, if a person accepts fate and does everything within their power without attachment to the outcome, they attain peace of mind. Starting in the 2nd century BCE, Stoicism began adapting to new conditions. Palladius of Rhodes, a student of Diogenes of Babylon who succeeded Chrysippus, played a key role in spreading Stoicism among the Roman elite. He softened some of the harsher aspects of the teaching, making it more practical for statesmen and influential figures. Panayiotis moved away from the strict determinism of early Stoics, arguing that humans possess a degree of free will. He also supplemented the doctrine with elements of Platonism and Aristotelianism. His student Posidonius continued spreading Stoicism throughout the Mediterranean, incorporating elements of scientific inquiry. Posidonius studied astronomy, geography, history, and psychology, aiming to make Stoicism not just a moral teaching, but a universal philosophical system explaining all aspects of life. He greatly influenced Roman thinkers like Cicero and Seneca, and his ideas paved the way for the further development of Stoicism in Rome. Roman Stoicism acquired a more practical orientation compared to its Greek roots. It became a philosophy focused on daily life, state governance, and inner resilience in the face of hardship. Unlike the early Stoics who devoted significant attention to logic and physics, Roman Stoics primarily concentrated on ethics, viewing it as a guide to living. They sought not merely to contemplate the world, but to apply philosophy in real-world conditions, whether in politics, slavery, war, or personal trials. The most prominent representatives of this period were Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. Each made a unique contribution to the development of Stoicism and adapted its principles to the realities of Rome. Seneca, living in the 1st century CE, was not only a philosopher, but also a statesman, writer, and tutor to Emperor Nero. His works, such as Letters to Lucilius, On the Shortness of Life, and On the Happy Life, expound Stoicism through personal reflections and practical advice. He emphasized that wealth, power, and fame hold no true value if a person lacks inner peace and virtue. Seneca viewed philosophy not as abstract contemplation, but as a tool for living. He taught the necessity of controlling one's emotions, maintaining rationality in all circumstances, and remembering the brevity of life. Despite his high position at court, he preached moderation and self-control, stressing that true wealth lies in the ability to be content with little. However, Seneca's life was full of contradictions. As a wealthy and influential man, he often faced complex moral situations, forced to navigate between his beliefs and the reality of Nero's court. Ultimately, accused of conspiracy against the emperor, he was forced to commit suicide, meeting death with the dignity befitting a Stoic. Epictetus, living in the 1st and 2nd centuries CE, presented a completely different figure. Born a slave in Asia Minor, he later gained freedom and became one of the most influential Stoic teachers. Epictetus spoke to ordinary people, making Stoicism accessible to everyone. He left no writings of his own. All his ideas were recorded by his student Arrian in the Discourses and the Enchiridion handbook. Epictetus's core teaching centered on distinguishing between what depends on us and what does not. He argued that true freedom is achieved when a person stops worrying about things outside their control and focuses on what is within their power, their thoughts, decisions, and actions. Epictetus taught that suffering arises from false judgments and attachments. We create our own anxiety by trying to control the uncontrollable. Instead, we should learn to accept the inevitable with dignity and courage. Epictetus was rigorous in his views, believing that a Stoic must not just talk about virtue, but practice it in every action. His ideas profoundly influenced Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who embodied Stoic principles in his life and rule. Marcus Aurelius, reigning in the mid-2nd century CE, became a living embodiment of Stoic philosophy. His work, Meditations, is not a philosophical textbook, but a personal journal where he reflects on fate, morality, power, and duty. He wrote about the importance of maintaining calm in all circumstances, being just, patient, and not succumbing to emotions. For him, life was a constant test of character. He believed one must fulfill their duties regardless of what happens around them. Unlike philosophers living in seclusion, Marcus Aurelius was the ruler of a vast empire, facing wars, rebellions, plagues, and betrayals. Despite this, he remained faithful to Stoic ideals, striving to govern wisely and justly. His reign became a symbol of philosophical resilience, and he himself entered history as one of the few rulers who combined power and virtue. After the death of Marcus Aurelius and the beginning of the Roman Empire's decline, Stoicism gradually lost its influence. In late antiquity, it gave way to Neoplatonism and Christianity, which offered their own perspectives on good, evil, and the meaning of life. However, Stoicism did not disappear entirely. Many of its ideas resonated with Christian ethics: humility before the inevitable, the importance of the inner world, the necessity of living in accordance with virtue. In the Middle Ages, Stoic ideas can be found in the works of philosophers and theologians, but a resurgence of interest began during the Renaissance, as thinkers turned anew to classical heritage. In the modern era, Stoicism influenced moral philosophy, particularly the views of Montaigne, Spinoza, and Kant. Immanuel Kant, for example, shared the Stoic notion of duty and the importance of a moral law independent of emotions and external circumstances. In the 19th and 20th centuries, Stoicism experienced a new wave of popularity thanks to psychology and existential philosophy. Its ideas are particularly evident in the works of Viktor Frankl, who, based on his experience as a concentration camp prisoner, developed the concept that humans retain freedom of will even in the most severe circumstances. Frankl wrote that even if one cannot change a situation, one can choose one's attitude towards it, perfectly aligning with the Stoic idea of controlling one's thoughts and reactions. Following Stoicism's flourishing in Rome and its gradual decline, the philosophy didn't vanish completely, but continued to influence thought in subsequent eras. However, to understand why Stoicism has remained relevant through the centuries, we need to delve into its fundamental principles. The Stoics didn't view philosophy as abstract speculation. For them, it was the art of living, a way of interacting with the world, a tool for achieving inner freedom and peace of mind. Their teaching was based on the idea that suffering arises not from events themselves, but from how we perceive them. If we learn to relate to the world correctly, managing our thoughts and emotions, we can find tranquility and composure regardless of external circumstances. Stoic philosophy is built upon three fundamental pillars: logic, physics, and ethics. These disciplines were not separate, but intricately connected, forming a holistic worldview. Logic in Stoicism was understood as the science of correct reasoning. It included not only the laws of argumentation and critical analysis, but also the ability to distinguish true judgments from false ones. The Stoics argued that most problems and anxieties stem from incorrect perceptions of reality. Therefore, one must learn to recognize errors in judgment and form an accurate view of the world. For example, if someone believes their happiness depends on wealth or recognition, they become hostage to external circumstances. However, if they realize these things lack objective value and their true good lies within their control, they free themselves from suffering. This is why logic played a crucial role. It helped individuals liberate themselves from illusions, misconceptions, and emotional dependence on the external world. Physics in Stoicism encompassed not only the study of nature, but also an understanding of the universe's structure. The Stoics believed the world operates according to a rational law, which they called the Logos. They viewed the universe as a unified whole, where everything happens for specific reasons, and chance is merely a manifestation of human ignorance. Everything that occurs follows the natural order of things, and humans should not resist this, but strive to live in harmony with natural laws. This concept helped Stoics accept the inevitable without fear or anger. If disasters, illnesses, or losses are part of the overall world order, they cannot be absolute evils. What matters is how one relates to them. The Stoics asserted that suffering arises when we resist the flow of events. But if we accept them as an unavoidable part of existence, they cease to trouble us. Thus, Stoic physics wasn't an abstract science but served as the foundation for their outlook on life, helping individuals find peace of mind. Ethics was the central pillar of Stoic philosophy, as its primary goal was to teach people how to live correctly. The Stoics maintained that the only true good is virtue, and everything else, health, wealth, fame, is ultimately indifferent. A person can be poor, sick, or lonely, but if they live virtuously, they remain free and happy. Virtue in Stoicism wasn't seen as a single quality, but as a combination of 4 cardinal principles: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Wisdom meant the ability to make sound decisions and distinguish true good from false. Courage was the strength of spirit to maintain resilience in the face of difficulties and fear. Justice involved honesty, integrity, and respectful treatment of others. Temperance was the ability to control desires, avoid excess, and prevent emotions from ruling oneself. The Stoics believed that if a person follows these virtues, they cannot be unhappy, because their happiness depends solely on themselves. A crucial concept in Stoicism was living in accordance with nature. However, nature, for the Stoics, referred not only to the surrounding world, but also to human nature itself. Humans, they believed, possess reason, meaning their natural purpose is to live according to reason, not follow instincts and desires. Living in accordance with nature meant adhering to rational principles, fulfilling one's duty, and accepting the world as it is, without trying to change the unchangeable. The Stoics often use the analogy of a dog tied to a cart. If the dog resists the cart's movement, it will still be dragged along, suffering in the process. But if it accepts the movement and runs alongside willingly, it avoids suffering. Similarly, a person who understands that everything in the world happens according to certain laws, and that they cannot control the course of events, but can control their reaction to them, attains inner freedom. One of Stoicism's core principles is that while we cannot control everything that happens in life, we can control our attitude towards those events. This teaching is known as the dichotomy of control. The Stoics argued that anxiety, fear, and suffering arise when we try to manage things beyond our power, such as others' opinions, political events, the weather, or even our own health. However, by focusing only on what we can control, our thoughts, actions, decisions, we can find peace and inner freedom. The Stoics divided reality into two categories: things we can control and things outside our control. According to Epictetus, some things are up to us and some are not. Everything within our power relates to the sphere of reason. Our beliefs, desires, intentions, reactions, actions, and aspirations. The Stoics claimed this is where true freedom lies because, regardless of circumstances, we can choose how to respond to them. At the same time, many aspects of life are beyond our control. These include the words and actions of others, economic crises, political changes, natural disasters, illnesses, and even career success or failure. We can care for our health, but we cannot fully control aging or genetics. We can strive for recognition, but we cannot force others to treat us as we wish. The Stoics believed anxiety arises when we try to influence what is beyond our control. For example, worrying about bad weather on the day of an important meeting won't change the weather, but it will spoil our mood and rob us of inner peace. However, accepting the rain as a given and focusing on what can be changed, bringing an umbrella, adjusting plans, allows us to remain calm. Acceptance means ceasing to fight reality and learning to let go of attachments. A key method for achieving this state is reframing expectations. The Stoics believed most disappointments stem not from events themselves, but from their failure to meet our expectations. For instance, if someone believes career success is a matter of fairness, they will suffer when a less competent colleague gets promoted. But if they accept that success involves many factors, including luck, connections, and external circumstances, they cease needless suffering. The Stoics proposed practices to help cultivate detachment. One is premeditatio malorum, negative visualization. Imagining the potential loss of things one is attached to: job, money, health, loved ones. This isn't meant to induce fear, but to prepare mentally for possible losses and appreciate what one currently has. Another practice is memento mori. Remember, you must die. Reflecting on life's transience helps realize that many things lack the importance we assign them, encouraging focus on the present. Recognizing that everything is temporary is also helpful. Any difficult situation will eventually end, so despair is pointless. Accepting the inevitable is not passive resignation, but a conscious decision not to waste energy fighting the unchangeable. The Stoics used several methods to learn acceptance with dignity. One is cognitive distancing. When unpleasant events occur, ask, "Can I change this?" If yes, act. If no, worry is pointless. For example, if a flight is delayed, anger won't speed it up. Focusing on reading or talking with loved ones uses the time productively. Another method is Amor Fati, meaning love of fate. The Stoics taught not just to endure fate's blows, but to embrace them gratefully as part of the grand cosmic order. Instead of complaining about circumstances, they sought opportunities for growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote that obstacles strengthen us if we learn to relate to them correctly. They argued that emotions can be managed through conscious awareness. For example, experiencing anger over injustice, one can either let it consume them or use it as motivation for rational action. Finally, the Stoics believed true freedom lies in the fact that one's inner state cannot be disturbed by anyone else unless they choose to allow it. Even amidst unfavorable external circumstances, one can always maintain strength of spirit. In the modern world, people face countless uncontrollable factors, from economic crises to social media opinions. Stoic practices of control and acceptance help avoid sweating the small stuff and maintain mental clarity. Someone who learns to distinguish what's in their power from what's not becomes freer and more emotionally resilient. Thus, the dichotomy of control helps us live more consciously, without wasting energy on useless worries. By accepting what we cannot change, we find peace and equanimity. Stoicism teaches not to fight reality, but to accept it as it is, finding opportunities for personal growth and wisdom in every event. The Stoics asserted that to gain inner freedom and peace, one must learn to control their attitude towards things, not the things themselves. However, mere acceptance isn't enough to live virtuously. One needs to know how to act correctly in any situation. This is why the Stoics considered virtue the highest good. Unlike material possessions, which can be lost, virtue always remains with a person and gives life meaning. For the Stoics, virtue is a practical principle defining how one should behave. They identified 4 cardinal virtues as the foundation of a righteous life. First is wisdom, the ability to see reality clearly, make sound judgments, and resist emotional sway. Clear thinking prevents trivial anxieties and helps discern what truly matters. Second is courage, the strength of spirit to endure fear and act rightly, even when difficult. Without courage, upholding principles is impossible, as all virtue requires fortitude. Third is justice. This includes honesty, integrity, respect for others, and striving for right action. The Stoics believed justice improves society and ennobles the individual. Fourth is temperance, self-control, managing desires, and resisting external temptations. A self-possessed person doesn't chase unnecessary pleasures and can focus on what's truly important. The Stoics didn't believe wealth, fame, or pleasure inherently bring happiness. If happiness depends on money, power, or success, it becomes unstable, as these can be lost. Those who base their lives on material goods remain vulnerable, fearing failure, worrying about others' opinions, constantly striving for things beyond their control. This is why life's purpose is developing virtue, not chasing pleasure. When one lives consciously, guided by wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, they become independent of the external world and maintain equanimity in all circumstances. The Stoic idea of freedom is rooted in self-mastery. True freedom, they believed, isn't doing whatever one wants, but controlling one's desires, fears, and emotions. Someone ruled by passions becomes their slave, distressed by unfulfilled desires, suffering from setbacks, afraid of losing possessions. Conversely, one who masters themselves remains free, even amidst hardship. Marcus Aurelius noted people seek refuge from suffering in country homes, by the sea, or in mountains, but the best refuge is one's own mind. If one can maintain calm, regardless of external conditions, their happiness is secure. Thus, for the Stoics, virtue isn't just a noble ideal, but the foundation of a truly free and happy life. Guided by reason, acting bravely, justly, and with self-control, one ceases to depend on the external world. Such a person doesn't fear change, isn't troubled by things beyond their control, and doesn't pursue unfulfilling goals. They live consciously and calmly, not allowing random circumstances to dictate their fate. The Stoics believed only this approach grants genuine inner strength and makes one truly happy. The Stoics believed the universe is rationally ordered and follows a specific design. They called this order the Logos, an all-encompassing rational principle governing the world and all events. The Logos permeates all of nature, from the movement of stars to human reason. It's not just a divine force or fate in the conventional sense, but rather the law of the cosmos, making the universe harmonious and whole. The Stoics compared the world to a living organism, where each part performs its function and is connected to everything else. Just as organs work together to sustain life, all events in the universe occur according to a rational order. Humans, as part of this great whole, should strive to live in harmony with nature and reason, accepting what happens as part of the world's overall structure. This worldview informs the Stoic attitude towards fate. They taught that much in life is predetermined, but this shouldn't cause anxiety or despair. On the contrary, they argued one should not just tolerate fate, but embrace it gratefully. They called this principle Amor Fati, love of fate. If something happens, it was meant to be, and resisting is futile. Instead of complaining about difficulties, the Stoics proposed seeing them as opportunities for personal growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote that obstacles don't impede action, but help us improve. For example, illness can teach patience, loss can reveal true values, and betrayal can foster self-reliance. The Stoics believed that consciously accepting fate makes one stronger and wiser. However, this doesn't mean Stoicism preaches complete resignation and inaction. The Stoics were not fatalists. They didn't believe one should simply drift along, doing nothing. They argued that while fate determines circumstances, humans are free in how they react. Our bodies are subject to illness and aging, but we can choose whether to suffer over this or calmly accept the inevitable. We can't control the weather, but we can prepare for rain or heat. We can't change others' opinions, but we can control our reaction to them. The Stoics often used metaphors to explain their attitude towards fate. They compared a person to a dog tied to a cart. The dog can resist and suffer, yet still be forced to follow. Or it can accept the cart's movement and run alongside freely and without pain. Fate can also be likened to a game of dice. We don't choose the numbers rolled, but we decide how to play the hand dealt. Thus, the Stoic idea of fate rests on recognizing that the world follows a rational order, and we should understand and live in harmony with it. This isn't slavish submission to circumstances, but rather a conscious acceptance of life as it is, with clarity of mind and inner resilience. Freedom lies not in changing the inevitable, but in learning to accept it with dignity. One who understands the laws of the cosmos and doesn't fight what's beyond their control becomes truly free. They stop worrying about uncontrollable factors and instead direct their energy where it can be beneficial. Moving from the theoretical foundations of Stoicism to its practical application, we arrive at a crucial topic: self-discipline and emotion management. The Stoics were not cold, unfeeling individuals as sometimes portrayed. They acknowledged feelings as a natural part of human life. However, they believed one must manage their feelings, not let feelings manage them. For Stoics, emotions themselves were neither good nor bad, but uncontrolled, they could destroy inner peace, lead to irrational actions, and even enslave a person to their passions. Therefore, Stoicism placed great emphasis on self-discipline, developing mindfulness, and maintaining inner calm in all circumstances. The Stoics distinguished between two levels of emotional experience: the initial reaction, proto-passion, and the conscious response. The initial reaction is an instantaneous, automatic emotional flare-up beyond our control. For instance, hearing bad news might trigger anxiety or irritation. What happens next, however, depends on us. A Stoic doesn't suppress emotions but acknowledges them without letting them dictate behavior. This contrasts sharply with someone acting impulsively, without pausing to reflect. Seneca called anger a short madness. When angry, people lose control, saying and doing things they later regret. The problem isn't anger itself, but allowing it to hijack the mind. Similarly, fear can arise as a natural response to threat, but if it morphs into constant anxiety, it becomes destructive. The Stoics offered practical methods for managing emotions to maintain mental clarity. A key technique is recognizing the pause between a stimulus and our reaction, a space where we can choose. Instead of reacting immediately, Stoics advised reflecting first. If someone speaks rudely, the impulse might be to retaliate, but pausing to consider reveals the words themselves are meaningless unless we assign them significance. Marcus Aurelius suggested mentally distancing oneself, viewing the situation objectively as if happening to someone else. This reduces emotional involvement and facilitates rational decision-making. Another important method is recognizing the temporary nature of emotions. Stoics understood that any emotion, however intense, eventually subsides. Feeling anxious? Remind yourself the situation will seem less significant in a few days. Feeling angry? Wait for it to cool before deciding. This is especially crucial for negative emotions. Resisting immediate surrender gradually weakens their power. The Stoics also practiced self-reflection. At day's end, they analyzed their actions, asking if they succumbed to emotion where calm was possible. This cultivates mindfulness and self-discipline. One begins to notice emotional patterns, understand their origins, and gradually learn to manage them. Particular attention was paid to controlling anger, fear, and anxiety. Anger was deemed one of the most destructive emotions, blinding reason and leading to rash actions. To manage it, Stoics suggested 3 methods. First, delay the reaction. Don't respond immediately. Allow time to cool down. Second, recognize anger doesn't improve the situation, only worsens it. Third, reflect on the transient nature of things. If angered by minor issues, recall they'll be forgotten in a year. Fear and anxiety, Stoics believed, also stem from misperceiving reality. People fear not events, but their thoughts about them. Worrying about potential failure creates fear only in the mind, as the future is unknown. 1. Pre-programs suffering. Epictetus called fear a self-created fantasy. To cope with anxiety, Stoics advised applying the dichotomy of control. If something depends on us, act. If not, worry is pointless. Thus, Stoics didn't deny emotions, but taught mindful engagement. They believed freedom comes only through self-control, not victimhood to feelings. By developing self-discipline, one learns to handle life's difficulties and achieves inner equilibrium independent of external circumstances. Emotion management was therefore central to Stoic practice, enabling calmness, wisdom, and freedom. If emotions can be managed, what about unavoidable physical or emotional pain? The Stoics argued that suffering isn't inherently evil, but a test of our spirit's strength. They believed one shouldn't submit to pain or grief, but use them as opportunities to become stronger, more conscious, and freer. Hence, the Stoic approach to handling suffering is crucial. Stoics taught that pain is merely a sensation. Our mind decides how much it disturbs us. The fact of pain itself doesn't harm us, but fear of it, self-pity, or irritation can make it unbearable. If ill, one can either suffer from thoughts of misfortune or accept illness as a natural part of life, directing energy towards recovery or enduring it steadfastly. Marcus Aurelius wrote that pain is just a bodily signal. If we don't exaggerate its importance, it becomes tolerable. He reminded himself that pain is temporary, while reason remains free. A vivid example of the Stoic attitude towards pain and suffering is Epictetus's life. Born a slave, he suffered brutal treatment. His volatile master once broke his leg, leaving him permanently lame. Yet, Epictetus didn't curse fate, complain, or hate his oppressors. He said the body could be harmed, but the spirit remains inviolable. Later, freed, he continued spreading Stoic wisdom, proving that even the harshest circumstances cannot strip away inner resilience. Losses and bereavements were also viewed as inevitable parts of life. Attachment to things and people is natural, they said, but we must always remember nothing belongs to us forever. Seneca wrote that everything is temporary. To avoid suffering, one must realize that eventually they will part with what they hold dear. He himself faced severe losses, loved ones, political disgrace, and ultimately forced suicide by Nero's order. Yet, he met death fearlessly, showing Stoic wisdom wasn't mere theory for him. His reflections emphasize the importance of being prepared for anything. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoics, faced lifelong trials that could break anyone. Besides ruling the Roman Empire during a turbulent period, he endured constant personal tragedies. His reign was marred by wars, plagues, conspiracies, and betrayals. Most of his children died young, and he suffered chronic illnesses. Yet, in his writings, he reminded himself that all difficulties are part of the grand cosmic order, and he must fulfill his duty regardless. He wrote that one should accept whatever fate sends and use every trial as an opportunity for growth. The Stoics extended this perspective to failure. Defeat shouldn't be seen as tragedy, but as a chance to learn. Epictetus said, if life takes something away, it tests our independence from it. Losing wealth? Remember, true happiness isn't in money. Betrayed? Realize you can't control others' actions, only your reaction. Stoics saw every setback as an opportunity to cultivate patience, courage, and wisdom. Thus, Stoics taught that suffering, loss, and failure aren't endpoints but trials that strengthen us. They didn't advocate avoiding pain, but meeting it with dignity and using it as a tool for self-improvement. Life's difficulties aren't cause for complaint, but chances to demonstrate resilience and freedom. True freedom, for Stoics, lies in not letting external circumstances dictate our inner state. Understanding this makes one invincible in the face of any trial. We've discussed the Stoic approach to suffering, loss, and failure. But what about the opposite side of life, wealth and success? If pain and loss shouldn't destabilize us, how should a Stoic relate to abundance, fame, and high social achievements? Should they reject material goods and embrace asceticism like the Cynics? Or can one be wealthy while remaining true to Stoic principles? The Stoics didn't consider wealth inherently bad, but warned against making it life's goal. Unlike the Cynics, who deliberately rejected money, comfort, and status, the Stoics recognized material goods could be useful if handled correctly. Wealth itself is neither good nor evil. It falls into the category of indifference. However, attachment to it can destroy inner freedom. The Stoics taught that money comes and goes, but basing one's life on it inevitably leads to fear of loss and attachment to uncontrollable things. A Stoic shouldn't consciously avoid wealth if it results from honest work or good fortune. Accepting it isn't wrong. The main problem, according to Stoics, isn't possessing wealth, but being attached to it. Seneca said money is just a tool, usable for good or ill, but wealth itself makes one neither good nor happy. Echoing Epictetus, he implied, "If you wish to make Pythocles rich, do not add to his store of money, but subtract from his desires." The greatest danger of wealth is its potential to consume the mind, fostering greed and dependence on luxury and pleasure. Someone striving for money for its own sake becomes its slave, never satisfied, always wanting more. This is why Stoics said, true wealth is contentment with little. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself the best defense against greed is realizing we need far less than we think. He wrote that having bread, clothes, and shelter means everything else is surplus, enjoyable, but not essential. Seneca's life exemplifies the Stoic attitude towards wealth. He was one of the richest men of his time, tutor and advisor to Emperor Nero, owning vast estates and lending money at interest, living luxuriously. How could he reconcile such wealth with Stoic philosophy? Wasn't he violating his own principles? Seneca saw no contradiction. He argued the crucial point isn't how much money one has, but how easily one can relinquish it. If a wealthy person can give up their fortune without regret, they are truly free. What matters is inner independence, not wealth itself. Stoics taught that abundance shouldn't breed carelessness or pride. Greater wealth brings greater responsibility. If fate grants money, power, or fame, use them beneficially. Help others, serve society, exemplify moderation. But don't make them life's purpose. They reminded us all wealth is temporary. We take nothing with us when we die. Therefore, the Stoic approach to wealth doesn't demand renunciation, but teaches the right relationship with it. A Stoic can be rich, but must not become a slave to money. They can strive for success, but shouldn't let it define their identity. The only true wealth, according to Stoics, is inner freedom, virtue, and the ability to maintain equanimity regardless of financial status or achievements. A true Stoic fears neither poverty nor wealth, knowing their happiness depends solely on themselves. We've covered the Stoic view on wealth and success, but what about relationships between people? Stoics emphasized that humans aren't isolated beings, but parts of a larger cosmic order. Living in society is inevitable, so Stoic philosophy extends beyond personal self-control and equanimity. A true Stoic must not only work on themselves, but also interact correctly with others, remaining just, patient, and compassionate. Living among others as a Stoic means accepting people as they are, without idealizing them or expecting perfection. Marcus Aurelius wrote that each morning we should prepare to meet selfish, ungrateful, malicious, arrogant people. But he also reminded himself, that anger towards them is pointless because they act according to their nature. If someone acts unjustly, it doesn't mean they consciously chose evil. Perhaps they simply don't know better, acting from limited understanding or emotion. A Stoic should approach such people not with contempt, but with understanding. Instead of irritation, they feel compassion, recognizing that others' flaws aren't reasons for anger, but occasions for tolerance. Stoics taught that we cannot control others' thoughts and actions, but we can control our reaction. If someone behaves unjustly, should we respond aggressively? If someone is rude, should a Stoic be rude back? Epictetus said the only thing in our power is our judgment about things. Others might harm our body or reputation, but they cannot harm our mind unless we allow it. Therefore, a Stoic avoids pointless arguments, doesn't waste energy on irritation, and doesn't let others' behavior dictate their inner state. Does this mean a Stoic should be completely detached and indifferent to others? No. On the contrary, Stoics believed one should participate in society, help others, act justly and reasonably. However, they insisted this should be done not for praise, recognition, or gratitude, but because it is the right thing to do. Seneca wrote that one should do good not for reward, but because it's in their nature. A Stoic helps others not to gain approval, but because they see it as part of their duty to the world. A key aspect of the Stoic approach to people was forgiveness. Stoics understood human imperfection and knew demanding wisdom and virtue from others leads to disappointment. Seneca said, if we're unwilling to forgive others' faults, we don't deserve forgiveness ourselves. He reminded us everyone makes mistakes, and getting angry at others' actions is like getting angry at rain or wind. Forgiveness for a Stoic isn't weakness, but a sign of wisdom. They don't hold grudges because they understand offenses are often illusions born from our expectations of others. Stoics also stressed the importance of tolerance. They knew everyone lives within their own belief system and doesn't always see the truth. Instead of condemning others for mistakes, a Stoic should be patient, recognizing their own imperfections. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you want to change the world, start with yourself. Don't expect people to be perfect, but be the example you wish to see." Thus, the Stoic approach to others balances inner calm with active engagement. A Stoic is not indifferent, but is independent of others' opinions. They are kind, but unattached to outcomes. They forgive, but remain firm in their principles. They understand human weaknesses, but don't let them influence their own actions. A true Stoic doesn't try to change others, but strives to be an example, showing it's possible to live in society while remaining wise, just, and free from unnecessary turmoil. To better understand how Stoicism worked in practice, let's look at those who not only contemplated its principles, but lived by them. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, three figures who demonstrated that resilience, rationality, and equanimity don't depend on one's status, wealth, or power. They lived in different times and circumstances, but each proved through example that Stoicism isn't an escape from reality, but the art of living well. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who remained a philosopher throughout his life. He ruled the vast Roman Empire during one of its most challenging periods: wars, plague, rebellions, conspiracies. These surrounded him daily, yet he didn't let external chaos destroy his inner order. He recorded his reflections, sought support in them, reminded himself that power is temporary and life unpredictable. His journal, known as Meditations, testifies to a human struggle against personal weaknesses, fears, and doubts. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This was his guiding principle. If you can't change circumstances, change your attitude towards them. He saw no point in complaining about fate. He believed every trial was an opportunity to display strength of spirit, proving to oneself the capacity to remain human even in the harshest conditions. Seneca, the man who lived amidst power but didn't let power possess him. He was Nero's tutor, held high offices, possessed immense wealth, yet always stressed that money and status are merely temporary things lacking true value. In his letters, he constantly warned against dependence on material goods and how much is lost when attached to inevitably transient things. He said, "Poor is not the one who has too little, but the one who craves more." His life was full of contradictions. A wealthy man preaching moderation, a courtier teaching independence. Yet, his lasting legacy isn't his wealth or position, but his thoughts on living with dignity and freedom. When Nero ordered his suicide, he met death calmly. He knew he couldn't change his fate, but he could choose how to accept it. Epictetus. The man who proved freedom is independent of external circumstances. Unlike Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, he had neither wealth nor power. Born a slave, living in subjugation, deprived of rights, he didn't consider himself unfortunate. He said, freedom isn't something fate gives or takes, but something carried within the mind. He taught, men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. No one can make you suffer unless you allow it. No one can take your freedom unless you relinquish it yourself. After gaining freedom, Epictetus didn't seek wealth or status. He became a teacher. His student Arian recorded his ideas, thanks to which we know what he considered paramount: mastering oneself, not wasting energy on complaints and anxieties, understanding what you can and cannot control. These three Stoics lived vastly different lives. One ruled an empire, another navigated court intrigue, the third began in slavery. Yet each remained true to themselves, regardless of circumstances. They didn't seek happiness in external things. They found it in their character, decisions, and ability to accept life as it is. Their lessons remain relevant today. They teach us that human strength lies not in position, but in reason, not in what happens to us, but in how we respond. Stoicism didn't exist in isolation. Though its founders lived in ancient Greece and Rome, many Stoic ideas resonate with principles from other cultures and religious traditions. This isn't surprising. Stoicism seeks answers to fundamental questions humanity has always posed: how to cope with suffering, find peace and wisdom, live meaningfully. Thinkers in the East, Buddhists, Taoists, Confucians, asked these same questions. Even today, Stoic ideas continue to influence philosophy, psychology, and daily life. Buddhism and Stoicism, despite different cultural roots, share striking similarities regarding suffering. The Buddha taught that suffering's cause is attachment to things, people, ideas, status. People suffer because they want the world to match their desires and feel pain when it doesn't. The Stoics said the same. Epictetus wrote that suffering stems not from events, but our judgments about them. Learning to accept reality as it is and recognizing that external circumstances are beyond our control leads to freedom. Both traditions emphasize self-discipline, mindfulness, and inner composure in the face of life's trials. Taoism, unlike Buddhism, emphasizes not combating suffering, but following the natural flow of things. Its core idea is Wu Wei, often translated as non-action or effortless action. This means not passivity, but skillfully fitting into life's natural rhythm, not trying to force the inevitable. The Stoics taught similarly. Trying to control the uncontrollable inevitably leads to disappointment. Accepting nature's laws and acting reasonably brings inner peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote that resisting the inevitable is like fighting the wind or trying to change the star's course. This echoes the Taoist concept of life's flow, where one acts in accordance with natural laws, not against them. Confucianism, unlike Taoism and Buddhism, focuses on social ethics, yet shares much with Stoicism. Confucius, like the Stoics, believed one should strive for virtue, self-discipline, and justice. He taught that a true sage acts not for reward or approval, but because it's right. This closely resembles Roman Stoicism, where duty to society was a supreme value. Marcus Aurelius, as emperor, embodied this principle, viewing power as responsibility, not privilege, and duty as serving society. Confucianism also stresses self-cultivation and self-control, key Stoic virtues. Stoicism profoundly influenced Christian tradition. Though Stoics didn't speak of God as Christianity does, many ideas found resonance in Christian morality. The Stoic concept of accepting fate resembles Christian humility before divine will. Calls for moderation, self-control, forgiveness, non-attachment to wealth. Stoics spoke of these too. Seneca wrote that revenge and hatred only destroy oneself, advising meeting evil with calm. However, differences exist. Stoics believed freedom comes through reason and self-discipline. Christianity emphasizes faith and God's grace. Stoics negated fear of death, seeing it as natural. Christianity teaches of life after death. Nevertheless, many Christian thinkers like Augustine, Boethius, and Aquinas drew inspiration from Stoicism, and monastic traditions often incorporate Stoic practices of self-control and asceticism. In the 20th and 21st centuries, Stoicism continues influencing philosophy and psychology. Existentialism, for instance, echoes Stoic ideas. Sartre and Camus argued the world itself lacks meaning. Humans must create their own, akin to the Stoic notion of inner autonomy. Viktor Frankl, psychologist and Holocaust survivor, developed logotherapy, largely based on Stoicism. He argued that even in horrific conditions, humans retain the freedom to choose their attitude. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is directly linked to Stoicism. Its founders, Aaron Beck and Albert Ellis, explicitly acknowledged Epictetus's influence. CBT's core principle, that emotions stem not from events, but our interpretation of them, perfectly matches the Stoic idea of managing thoughts, and thus reactions. Modern psychologists recommend methods used by ancient Stoics: journaling, examining beliefs, distinguishing between what's controllable and what's not. Thus, Stoicism isn't just an ancient philosophy, but a universal worldview intersecting with various cultures and continuing to impact the modern world. It resonates with Buddhism on suffering, Taoism on accepting natural order, Confucianism on duty and self-discipline. Its ideas influenced Christian morality and inspired modern philosophical and psychological theories. This proves Stoicism isn't merely ancient texts, but a living tradition providing tools for a rational, mindful, and resilient life. Stoicism influenced not only philosophy and psychology, but also art, literature, and drama. Its ideas are reflected in works by many great writers, from ancient tragedians to contemporary authors. Stoic philosophy tackles timeless human themes, coping with loss, maintaining dignity amid adversity, staying true to principles in a chaotic, uncertain world. Ancient tragedy often reflects the Stoic perception of fate. Greek playwrights like Sophocles, Euripides, and Aeschylus created works where protagonists face inevitable, fated trials. Central to these tragedies is the human struggle against destiny, the attempt to preserve honor and dignity even facing imminent doom. Stoics saw these plots confirming their view: we can't control external circumstances, but can control our reaction. In Sophocles' Oedipus at Colonus, the protagonist, realizing his fate, accepts it with dignity. Understanding avoidance is impossible. Antigone, in Sophocles' play of the same name, places duty and moral principles above her own life, viewing death as beyond personal desires and fears, a profoundly Stoic motif, recognizing one's role in the grand order and following it with dignity. Shakespeare frequently employed Stoic motifs. His characters contemplate fate, self-control, and duty, demonstrating resilience against trials. One of Shakespeare's most Stoic heroes is Brutus in Julius Caesar. He embodies Roman Stoicism, acting not on emotion, but duty and conviction, accepting consequences without fear or regret. A classic Stoic example. Hamlet, reflecting on death, says, "If it be now, 'tis not to come. If it be not to come, it will be now. If it be not now, yet it will come. The readiness is all." Stoicism also appears in King Lear, where Lear, after immense suffering, realizes the transience of power and inevitability of change. In Shakespeare's later works like The Tempest, Stoic ideas of accepting fate and forgiveness become central. Leo Tolstoy, inspired by Stoic philosophy, often explored themes of resignation to fate and the search for inner freedom. Prince Andrei Bolkonsky in War and Peace is a striking example. Initially seeking glory and external success, he gradually realizes life's true meaning lies not in power or victories, but inner peace and harmony with the world. His reflections on death and fate strongly resemble Marcus Aurelius's ideas. In Anna Karenina and Resurrection, Tolstoy explores Stoic attitudes towards suffering and the quest for moral equilibrium, particularly through Levin and Nekhlyudov. Tolstoy himself studied the Stoics and developed related ideas in his later religious philosophical works. Ernest Hemingway, a 20th century writer, depicted characters acting in the spirit of Stoic philosophy. They face pain, loss, death, but accept their fate without complaint, maintaining courage and dignity. The old man Santiago in The Old Man and the Sea is iconic. His struggle with the sea, solitude, and the realization that a man can be destroyed but not defeated perfectly aligns with the Stoic ideal. Many of his other works feature characters demonstrating grace under pressure, maintaining composure, and acting with dignity through trials. Stoicism continues to inspire contemporary authors and philosophers. Recent decades have seen numerous books explaining Stoic ideas accessibly. William B. Irvine's A Guide to the Good Life adapts Stoicism for everyday application. Ryan Holiday's books, like The Obstacle is the Way, reveal Stoicism's practical use in business, leadership, and personal life. His work has popularized Stoicism among entrepreneurs and athletes, proving its relevance in the 21st century. Furthermore, Stoic ideas appear in popular culture. Films increasingly feature characters living by Stoic principles. In Ridley Scott's Gladiator, Maximus displays resilience against suffering, accepts fate, and follows his duty despite losses. In Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, Dr. Brand says, "We must confront the reality of interstellar travel," implying doing what's necessary despite fear and doubt, a purely Stoic stance. Thus, Stoicism has profoundly impacted art and literature, helping writers and playwrights explore themes of fate, courage, inner freedom, and accepting the inevitable. From ancient tragedies to modern books and films, Stoic philosophy continues to inspire reflection on how to live with dignity and meaning. Let's turn to brief excerpts from Stoic texts that best capture the essence of this philosophy. One of the most famous and influential Stoic works is Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. This text is the Roman emperor's personal journal, written not for publication but for himself, recording reflections on life, duty, fate, morality, and self-discipline. This makes the book unique. It lacks rhetoric or attempts to impress. It contains only the honest thoughts of a man striving daily to live by Stoic philosophy despite trials, power, and responsibility. The central idea of Meditations is that we cannot control external events, but we can always control our attitude towards them. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminds himself that things themselves are neutral. Only our thoughts make them good or bad. He writes, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the core Stoic principle. Learning to manage thoughts, detach from others' opinions, and avoid attachment to circumstances leads to true freedom. The emperor frequently reflects that most anxieties and sufferings arise from incorrect judgments. He advises remembering no one can insult or offend us unless we grant them significance. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. This teaches us not to take others' words and actions personally, realizing the only thing we control is our own reaction. A crucial theme is accepting fate. Marcus Aurelius asserts the universe is governed by rational law, and resisting the course of events is futile. He advises perceiving all events, even negative ones, as part of the natural order. He writes, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." This expresses the concept of Amor Fati, love of fate, a key element of Stoic philosophy. But this isn't passive resignation. Marcus Aurelius believes every trial is an opportunity for growth. His famous phrase, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." It means difficulties don't hinder progress, but forge character, build strength, teach patience and wisdom. Faced with problems, one can either complain or use them to develop courage, endurance, and fortitude. the emperor pays special attention to time and mortality. He reminds himself life is short, wasted on empty anxieties, anger, or fame-seeking. He advises living in the present and not postponing virtuous actions. Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. This echoes the Memento Mori idea, awareness of mortality inspiring not fear, but appreciation of each moment. He writes, "Death, like birth, is a mystery of nature, a composition out of the same elements and a decomposition into the same." The Stoic view of death centers on accepting its inevitability and realizing that only how one lived matters. As a ruler, Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, ingratitude, and envy, yet advises tolerance and understanding towards people. He writes, "Begin the morning by saying to yourself, 'I shall meet with the busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial.' All these things happen to them by reason of their ignorance of what is good and evil." This expresses the Stoic call not to judge others, but accept them as part of life without letting them disturb one's inner peace. He also writes, "When a man has done thee any wrong, immediately consider with what opinion about good or evil he has done wrong. For when thou hast seen this, thou wilt pity him, and wilt neither wonder nor be angry." A Stoic shows compassion not from weakness, but understanding human nature. They don't demand perfection from others, but strive to exemplify rationality, justice, and tolerance themselves. Marcus Aurelius emphasizes self-discipline and emotional control. He reminds himself not to yield to fear, anger, or pleasure-seeking. He writes, "Reject your sense of injury, and the injury itself disappears." The Stoic ideal is living simply, not chasing wealth, fame, or enjoyment, but content with little and focused on what truly matters. He believes true strength lies in self-control, not controlling others. Meditations is not just philosophy, it's a life guide. It lacks abstract theories, offering only practice, how to stay calm amid difficulties, accept fate, avoid wasting time on trivial concerns, and remain virtuous regardless of circumstances. The emperor wrote these notes for himself, yet they proved universal. They teach that life can't be controlled, but our attitude can. They remind us each day is a chance for self-improvement. They show resilience isn't innate, but results from constant self-work. Though written nearly 2,000 years ago, their value endures. They read like guidance for 21st century individuals facing stress, loss, injustice, and anxiety. And Marcus Aurelius's core advice remains constant. Don't waste energy on what's beyond your control. Live virtuously, be courageous, and follow reason. Only then will you find true freedom. Continuing our exploration of classic Stoic texts, we turn to Seneca's letters to Lucilius. This work is a collection of letters Seneca wrote to his friend and student Lucilius, an official and writer. However, these were not mere personal correspondence. They became a comprehensive philosophical treatise conveying key Stoic ideas accessibly and practically. Unlike Marcus Aurelius's diary entries, the letters are addressed to a specific person, written in a livelier, more didactic style. Seneca uses everyday examples, historical anecdotes, and personal reflections to make philosophy understandable and applicable to real life. This practical focus makes letters to Lucilius one of the most valuable sources of Stoic wisdom. Seneca insists, philosophy shouldn't be abstract theory, but a tool for improving life. He warns Lucilius against empty reflections unsupported by action, saying true philosophy manifests in deeds, not words. Studying philosophy for its own sake is pointless if its principles don't help one become better. He writes, "Non scholae sed vitae discimus." We learn not for school, but for life. This famous aphorism highlights philosophy's practical, not academic purpose. A central theme is the value of time. Seneca constantly reminds Lucilius life is short, yet most people waste it chasing money, power, fame, or entertainment. He argues the biggest mistake is assuming ample time remains. In reality, each day lived is a lost part of life. The wise person's goal is to realize this and not postpone important matters or virtue seeking. Seneca says, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." He advises daily reminders that time is the only irreplaceable resource. One can lose and regain money, property, or status, but lost time is gone forever. Seneca urges cherishing every moment and using it wisely, advising Lucilius to avoid useless talk, idle curiosity, and trivial pursuits that distract from what matters. Another key theme is emotion management. Seneca views anger, fear, envy, anxiety, and other passions as major obstacles to wisdom and tranquility. He writes, "Emotions themselves aren't evil, but uncontrolled. They corrupt reason and hinder right decisions." Seneca especially warns against anger, calling it a short madness. He argues that in anger, one loses rational judgment and acts regretfully. He advises Lucilius against irritation, cultivating tolerance instead, reminding him nothing in the world warrants losing self-control. He also addresses fear as a primary cause of suffering. Seneca claims people fear not real threats, but their own imaginings. He writes, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." He advises Lucilius not to worry about the future or conjure grim scenarios, as most fears never materialize. One of the most famous themes is the attitude towards wealth and poverty. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, still considered money and property indifference. He argues wealth isn't measured by possessions, but contentment with little. He writes, "Poor is not the one who has too little, but the one who craves more." True wealth, he believed, lies in peace of mind and independence from external goods. He advises Lucilius to occasionally practice voluntary poverty to understand how little is truly needed for happiness. Seneca himself did this, spending days in simple clothes, eating modestly, testing poverty's supposed terror. He asserts that one unafraid of poverty becomes truly free, having nothing left to lose. Seneca reflects extensively on fate and accepting the inevitable. He advises Lucilius not to fret over uncontrollable things, remembering much happens regardless of our desires. He writes, "Ducunt volentem fata, nolentem trahunt." Fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling. This expresses the Stoic idea that resisting events is futile. Better to accept them with dignity and use them as growth opportunities. He also touches on friendship and relationships. A true friend, he believes, isn't one who praises or flatters, but helps us improve. He warns against hypocritical connections, advising choosing friends based on character, not status. Friendship should build on mutual respect and honesty, not advantage. The theme of death permeates many letters. Seneca teaches that fearing death is pointless, as it's a natural part of life. He argues death isn't loss, but simply cessation of existence, like day yielding to night. He advises Lucilius to prepare for the inevitable and live ready to depart any time without regrets. He writes, "Death is not fearsome, but the fears we associate with it are." Thus, Letters to Lucilius isn't just correspondence, but a comprehensive guide to Stoic living. Seneca teaches valuing time, managing emotions, achieving freedom regardless of external circumstances, and accepting fate with dignity. He shows true wealth isn't material, fears are often exaggerated, and philosophy must be a practical life tool. Though written 2,000 years ago, these letters remain relevant, addressing timeless questions everyone faces. We continue exploring key Stoic works with Epictetus's Enchiridion, also known as the Handbook. Unlike Marcus Aurelius's Meditations or Seneca's Letters, this text is a concise, clear guide to Stoic living, comprising aphorisms and practical advice. Epictetus himself, a teacher-philosopher, left no writings. His student Arrian recorded his ideas, aiming to preserve them. The Enchiridion presents Stoic principles in a condensed, accessible format for daily application. A central principle, introduced at the outset, is the distinction between what depends on us and what does not. Epictetus asserts anxiety and suffering arise not from events themselves, but our interpretations. He says, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." Losing property, illness, or others' harsh words don't cause suffering inherently. Our perception does. Learning to see things as they are, without unnecessary emotion or subjective judgment, brings inner peace. Epictetus emphasizes focusing attention and effort only on what's truly within our power. He advises, if you want to be invincible, don't enter into contests in which you aren't the master. Or more simply, if you want to be truly invulnerable, don't strive for anything that isn't under your control. We can't control weather, economic crises, others' actions, or public opinion, but we can control our behavior, thoughts, and reactions. Wasting energy, worrying about the unchangeable, Epictetus believed, makes us slaves to circumstance. Directing attention solely to what's within our power makes us free. Epictetus also reminds us the world won't always conform to our desires. He teaches, demand not that events should happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and your life will flow well. Instead of wishing circumstances would change, learn to change your attitude towards them. Losing a job, one can complain and suffer, or use it to reassess goals, gain skills, and find better work. A primary Stoic goal, according to Epictetus, is developing imperturbability, ataraxia, achieved by recognizing the limits of one's power and detaching from external things. Accept the inevitable not just passively, but perceive all events as part of the natural order. He advises treating life like a play. If assigned the role of a slave, play it well. If a ruler, perform it honorably. The key, says Epictetus, isn't trying to control the script, but living one's role as virtuously as possible. Epictetus warns that a Stoic must be prepared for others' misunderstanding or condemnation. Living by principles, detached from fame, loss, or opinions, may invite criticism or ridicule. However, a Stoic shouldn't try to persuade others or justify themselves, simply continue on their path. Accepting fate holds significant importance in the Enchiridion. Epictetus teaches not resisting what's beyond our control, but accepting events as if we willed them. He says, "Seek not for events to happen as you wish, but rather wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." This isn't a call to passivity, but teaches the futility of fighting the inevitable. Instead of wasting energy resisting, focus on handling challenges with dignity. Epictetus also stresses that virtue is the only true good for a Stoic. Everything else, wealth, health, reputation, is ultimately indifferent. One can be poor, sick, treated unjustly, yet remain free and happy by maintaining control over their mind and acting virtuously. Happiness, Epictetus believed, depends not on material goods or social approval, but solely on self-mastery. We conclude our account of Stoicism, a philosophy that teaches how to live with dignity, maintain rational composure in the face of trials, and direct our energy only towards what is within our power. The Stoics reminded us that happiness lies not in external circumstances, but in our attitude towards them, that freedom begins where futile struggle against the inevitable ends, and that every day is an opportunity to become wiser and stronger. Their thoughts, having survived centuries, remain vibrant and relevant because humans, just as thousands of years ago, seek peace, meaning, and resilience in the face of destiny.